Hello, everyone. Greetings from Chicago. First, a big thank you to the International Finance Forum for their kind invitation to participate in the annual conference in Hong Kong. We've worked together for more than 2 decades, first during my time as CEO of Goldman Sachs and then as U.S. Treasury Secretary. And in more recent years, he has partnered with me and the Paulson Institute to tackle some big public policy challenges. When I reflect on our years working together, I can't help but marvel at the incredible amount of change that has occurred around us in such a short period of time. When I first started working in China in the 1990s, it was a time of reform and opening up. Back then, I had the opportunity to bring major Chinese SOEs, including China Mobile, to the public markets. I was also honored to help form Tsinghhua's International CEO Advisory Board. Since then, China's $1 trillion economy in 2001 has become a $17 trillion behemoth. The country has lifted over 800 million people out of poverty. It has become a technological and manufacturing powerhouse, as well as the world's largest trading nation. And China's growth helped to power the global economy in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis. Simply put, China's incredible growth and its integration into the global economy has been one of the defining stories of this century. But over the past decade or so, a new set of challenges has emerged, and it is increasingly clear that China faces some difficult choices ahead. The country is struggling with deflation, weak consumer confidence, high youth unemployment, and sluggish demand. And unlike in 2009, it is the United States rather than China that is powering the global economy in 2024. While China's recently announced stimulus was a necessary step to stabilize the economy, there are big underlying issues that still must be addressed. So as I see it, China today is at a crossroads. It could pivot and make necessary changes to place more reliance on markets in the private sector, competition, and more openness. I have no illusions that this is an easy choice, but I continue to believe that the latter road will help to produce better results for China and for the world. And so I encourage China's leaders to pursue reforms in 3 baskets, which I believe would be helpful to rebuild confidence in its economy. First is competition reform. Foreign firms need to be allowed to compete with Chinese firms on a level playing field. And for that matter, Chinese private firms should be allowed to compete with state firms in the same way. The second area involves the role of the market. For China, more open and efficient markets would enhance the financial security of Chinese investors and savers. It would minimize volatility and instability. And it would accelerate the development of China's carbon market and facilitate more international cooperation around green finance. I was pleased to see that green finance will be one of the main elements of China's recent stimulus program. I believe this is an area that holds real potential for cooperation between China and the U.S. and the rest of the world. Third, China should do more to foster and protect innovation. Data localization requirements, for example, have been a significant sticking point between U.S. and China due to concerns around protection of proprietary information, IP exposure, and privacy. By adopting international best practices for cross-border data transfers and security standards, China would facilitate greater confidence for its international companies. Now, in closing, it has been one of the great privileges of my career to have a ringside seat for China's economic transformation. I've worked in China on these issues for decades for a simple reason. I believe that more engagement, more openness, and more communication between our 2 countries will lead to a better future. Of course, the world is a different place today than it was 3 decades ago. The U.S.-China relationship is fraught, and it looks to me like it's going to be very challenging for the foreseeable future. Our 2 nations have conflicting security interests, and Economic, trade, and technology issues are all being filtered through the lens of national security. Competition is particularly intense to develop and deploy technologies of the future. But the reality is that the U.S.-China relationship will shape geopolitics and global economics for the foreseeable future. And so our two nations need to find a framework to allow us to manage conflicting security objectives so as to keep the relationship from spinning out of control. At the same time, we need to find common ground and work in complementary ways where we have a shared interest in mitigating risks such as climate change, nuclear proliferation, and cybersecurity. Ultimately, we have a fundamental shared interest in global stability, and the world will be a more dangerous and less prosperous place if we don't recognize this fact and act accordingly. All of us, business leaders, policymakers, and civil society, have a role to play in working towards a safer, more stable, prosperous world. Thank you.